we would get intimidated sometimes from daily interviews. But I have nothing to report. Do I have to come up with something? What if the teacher doesn't accept that? Or what if, will they punish me? Will they chastise me? Will they scold me? If I have nothing, then does that mean that I'm not improving? What if the teacher says that? All that are just hindrances, nonsense. So whether there's nothing happening or something happening, your job is to show up. Because it's truly a luxury that you have. That's not something that happens today anymore. Very rarely, where the teacher offers to see the student on a daily basis on retreats. So use your time wisely, use the opportunities you have wisely. So I've been offering you encouragements on a daily basis, and I'm hoping that you're able to apply them in your practice, instead of just gathering them as data. These are not data. They need not be taken as such. It's all about application. A big part of that is the willingness to take it and try it. See if you can actually... why did the teacher say that? Usually the response is, well, they don't know me as I do know myself. I've lived with myself all my life, after all. So we need to be humble when we encounter the Dhamma, when we are seeking the Dhamma. A lot of that has to do with the softness. Oftentimes, that's the very thing, that attitude is the very thing that stops us from going forward, even in our sit. Especially when you're trying to go deeper, when you're sitting there for a reason. You're sitting there to understand. You're sitting there to develop a capacity, a wider capacity of understanding. There's the term that Lord Buddha uses, yatha bhutang pajanati, to be able to see how things come to be. Well, how can you see anything if your eyes are shut? With tape, duct tape, and a mask on top of that. Eye mask, this time. Not everyone who came to Lord Buddha to learn actually got away with something, walked away with something. Many people stayed putujjanas, you know. Many of them. In fact, majority of them. But the suttas report on the good news, on the ones who did. And the suttas, it's a miracle that they survived 26 centuries almost to get to us. Some things will definitely get lost. That's natural. Especially when you think about 400 or 500 years. Nothing was recorded. It was just repetition. One person to the next. And memory. We are basically relying on the memories of other human beings. And then, of course, we compare notes and see, okay, we get these suttas, these nikayas from here, and we have other sources, and then we compare and we get an idea. And then you look at the nikayas, the Dhamma, the suttas, and then you look at the Vinaya, and then you get a better idea as to, is there correspondence? But the big testing ground is you. You will not be able to test any of it unless you are willing to take off those masks, the duct tape from your eyes. When we take refuge in the Buddha, especially, we are taking refuge in the confidence that we have the plausibility, the possibility, the probability that we too can experience the very same thing that he did and everyone else. Because you have all the necessary lab equipment. It means you have the heart, you have the mind, you have the body, you have the sixth sense basis. Your mind functions, okay, good. Actually, it's a wonderful thing. You have all the stuff, the right stuff. But that doesn't happen in a passive way. It needs to be applied in an active way. Passive in the sense that, well, then the Dhamma should do its thing. No, you have to relinquish a lot. Another reason why you wear white, the way I understand it, is to relinquish all the other pigments. You can call it ego, all the other stuff that you've gathered throughout your life, from different teachers, from different things, different places, your childhood, and to become pure. That's what the color means. In the Candana ceremony, where we as bhikkhus get robes, the robes are not the actual color first. It's white. They have to make sure it's absolutely pure white. So they clean it, clean it, clean it, especially if they're picking it up from the cremation ground, you know. There's stuff on it. Sometimes some of the stuff don't come out. Nasty stuff. But you still have to wash it until it's absolutely white. Then they dye it with the specific type of fruit that is available at the time in that region, wherever it is. Because if you take something that's already dirty, it will not take on the dye. It will come off as easily as you put it on the first time you wash it. So you have to start from the ground up. Years ago when I used to paint paintings, art, I didn't like it when you had to do the base, so you have to apply a certain layer of white color, basically, which will allow you later on to apply all the colors you desire, all the turquoise blues, all the green, or all the rose color, all the red, vermilion, yellow, any color you want under the sun. But you can only do that if it's white, clean. These are, of course, just metaphors I'm using. So it's not just a matter of you showing up. Just show up, whether it's the retreat or wherever it is, and everything else will take care of itself. That is not possible. It's like going to a restaurant and you're starving, and you're just sitting there outside. At least put a sign on your neck, say, "I'm hungry." That's something. Somebody will know. As bhikkhus, we have the bowl and it's empty. It's like, okay. In some countries where there are no bhikkhus, there's no pindapada, sometimes bhikkhus have to literally write on a plaque, on a piece of paper. Sometimes they have the kappia or someone, a layperson, carrying a banner in that native language of that area. Whether it's Germany or Italy or France, all these other countries that didn't have Dhamma, or regions within these countries where it's absolutely like unheard of. It's a village, it's a rural place somewhere. People read it and it's like, oh, that's what it means. So you have to speak up. The speaking up part is what I'm trying to describe as your willingness to take on dye. You cannot take on dye, the color, the pigments of Dhamma, if you already come with a dirty piece of cloth. Which means your concepts that this is the best thing that I could become. Don't push me, Bhante. This is it. This is it. What happened to anicca? Impermanence? Or I am my past experiences. Nothing can change my experiences from the past. Really? What about the wrinkles on your face? Were they always there, even when you were 10? How about your eyesight? Was it always this way? Did you have glasses when you were as young as 2? What happened? We accept certain principles as it regards to impermanence, but when it comes to the real, deep, core stuff, don't touch this part. We don't touch that. Everything else, no. The Dhamma is not a cover-up. It's not a series of titles. It's not patching. Patching. In America, every time I would, as a layman, you move houses, you move apartments, so sometimes you rent a new place and you go in, everything looks good, and sometimes you have to hang a painting or something on the wall. Everything looks nice. The wall seems okay. And the moment you're trying to put the tiniest little hanger type of the nail in there, and in America they don't have, rarely do you find a wall that's actually solid, okay? Because you can punch through it. That's how soft they are, usually. So, drywall we call it. Also, I noticed some of the rooms here have that, but in general, they're made out of concrete or bricks or things like that. But, so you see this wall and you're trying to hammer this thing in, and all of a sudden, boom, it goes in. Because somebody before you patched it up. They got some plaster and it was a bigger hole and they filled it up, and then painted over it, looks smooth, undetectable, until someone else comes. That's patching, faking. So coming to an intensive retreat exposes those patches. And it has to do with the person and how much are they able to tolerate the teacher poking you. Not just the teacher, the Dhamma. How much do you tolerate the Dhamma? Do you allow it in? Do you allow it in? If the soil is too hard, if it's covered with concrete, and it pours and pours, rains, it will not be able to absorb the rain. So please don't be made out of concrete. That's why I'm teaching you metta. You have to have your heart soften up. The Dhamma is not a supermarket for you to go grab whatever you want and get out. Pay whatever you want, meaning even a 10-day retreat. I paid that, so I should get something. So we have to be able to be porous, to allow Dhamma in. And the biggest obstacle is us, no one else. It's never the outside world, it's never the other person, it's never your roommate or roommates. It's never the noise outside, it's never the injustices in the world, it's not your parents, no matter how messed up they were in raising you, no matter how bad of a life you've had. Those are factors which are not, we're not denying them. But it's essential for us to see beyond them. It's like a swimmer, long-distance swimmer, who looks and sees before they take off, before they jump into the water to swim across a body of water. They need to know where they're going. The waves might be strong, this and that. They are taking note of it. The wind, the current. Every once in a while, they raise their gaze, their head, every once in a while to see where is their trajectory. Are they off? Is the current taking them downstream? What's happening? So that focus needs to be there with you and not feel like you're pushing through a 10-day retreat. It shouldn't be like a chore. Today's sutta, actually it's different than the one that I had originally scheduled on the retreat schedule. I chose to go with another one because given your practice that you're doing, so it's more relevant to that. And it's a lovely sutta, and all of them are. So this is also from the Anguttara Nikaya, Book of the Sixes this time, Sutta number 13, Nissāraṇīya Sutta. Elements to be driven out. Elements to be driven out. Bhikkhus, there are these 6 elements to be driven out. What 6? Here, bhikkhus, a bhikkhu would say, I have cultivated and developed the heart's release through loving kindness, metta, which has now become my habit and the basis of my constant practice. But even though I have been engaged in it, having scrutinized and properly undertaken it, yet I still experience hatred overwhelming my heart, and I feel lost because of it. Then this bhikkhu should be advised in the following manner. Do not say so, Venerable Sir. Do not misinterpret the words of the Blessed One, nor misrepresent him. For to do so brings you much harm for a very long time. The Blessed One has never said nor instructed such a thing, because it would be impossible that when one has cultivated and developed the heart's release through loving kindness, when it's already turned into a habit as the basis of one's constant practice, by engaging in it, having scrutinized and properly undertaken it, that one may still experience hatred overwhelming one's heart, or even feel lost because of it. After all, friend, hatred is driven out when the heart is released through loving kindness. Metta is the antidote to hatred. It's the anti-venom of hatred. Hatred is like venom that spreads. It incapacitates you. One of the terrible things about venom is, depending on what kind of a, let's say a snake, it's coming from, it could be a neurotoxin. The nerves would suddenly become incapacitated. The person suddenly will become numb or fall to the ground and become like a quadriplegic, where none of the limbs work. There's another one that's a myotoxin, which is muscle incapacitator, if you will. The muscles suddenly cramp up. They get infused by the venom. And there's the other one, which is also very bad. That is a hemotoxin. Hema, or hemo, means blood. It's a toxin that solidifies the blood. If you take that kind of venom and you pour it into a glass full of blood, just a drop of that venom, just within a few seconds, can turn that liquid into solid, lumpy. It will not be able to go through your body, and the person dies. Hatred is like that. It creates heat in your heart and your body, Suddenly your hands feel each like they're made of ton. They weigh a ton each. You can't move your legs perhaps. Your gut hurts. You can't think straight. And your tongue doesn't move as you want it. Your throat hurts. Your breathing changes. You start breathing either shallow or suddenly your breathing stops for a while, for extended periods, which causes your heart rate to even go up. Pressure, blood pressure goes up. Hatred. Just that emotion, that feeling, that painful feeling, the emotion of hatred, which is dosa, one of the kileshas. Metta, on the other hand, is very soothing. It's an ointment on a burn. The heart that is burning or has burnt. But you have to be willing to let it be applied. Every one of us has that capacity. So here in this section it says, the person might say, oh, I've been practicing metta, it's become part of my life. That's actually my only type of practice, the only meditation I do. Okay, but sometimes I just get overwhelmed by hatred. Even though the person says, I have reached the release of the heart, meaning they have actually experienced liberation through metta. Metta does take you to Nibbana, In the Nissāraṇīya Sutta, one of the last verses, that's what it says. If you practice metta, you will never enter another mother's womb again. You will never experience birth again. Snip, snip. Released yourself from samsara. So if a person says, I have attained that, yet somehow I feel overwhelmed, taken over by hatred. And Lord Buddha is saying, if someone says that, correct them, because they have not yet reached that stage. Years ago, when I was doing a metta retreat, I was a student and I was participating, and I have mentioned this in a previous talk, I think some time ago. And on day 4 or 6, my back was hurting like crazy because I had taken a shower and it was very hot. It was in a desert environment. And I sat in a shaded area. But I didn't know, because I used to be, and still am, I guess, sensitive. My body is sensitive to the wind, the current. And the wind was blowing nicely, and I thought, oh, so soothing, so nice. But I sat there and I just meditated, and suddenly my neck didn't move well. My back became very tight. And all the exhausted muscles caved in. They just clamped up. So I was in pain for a few more days. And even though we were told not to speak, but I saw one of the other participants talking with another participant and stating during lunch that he happens to be a chiropractor plus a physiotherapist, and I think also an acupuncturist. So he had the whole shebang, all the tools necessary. And on top of that, there was another participant that he offered to help. And I said, how nice. Because she was complaining about her neck, and mine was my back. So I was just standing there listening, and I'm like, may I have some, please, after she's done? So I waited, and after some time of working on her, so I thought, okay, now he might be able to help me because I'm in tremendous pain. I don't want to stay there talking with them. I'd rather be in my kuti or in the Dhamma hall. But the pain is excruciating. And I didn't have any medicine with me. And so I said, could you please do something? And he said, I can't help you. I'm not supposed to help anyone. But you just helped her. You know, I didn't get to say that, but we were not just 3 of us, there were 4 or 5 people, so other people. So I said, it's just, I hate to bother you, but it's really, really painful. Could you maybe adjust something? Push a pressure point, something? He says, no, I can't help you. Very cold, very much in the presence of, I could feel the hatred in his eyes, which I had noticed from day one when we first joined the retreat, and I couldn't understand why. So apparently something might have triggered when he had seen me. It does happen, you know. Sometimes we see something in a characteristic, a trait in someone else, or it just might be karmic. You feel the person and there's just this incredible something come out which is not pleasant towards this person. And you're like, no, I'm not going to talk to them. I'm not going to, no. So for a few times before those 6 days, there were opportunities for me to be proven wrong. But sadly, that was the climax. That was the moment where I really saw what was happening underneath, sadly. So I endured, and then unfortunately there was another meditator who saw during one of those days how painful it was for me to move, and I couldn't move my body. And he said, come. So he helped me with some yoga exercises, with adjustments. Later, I was talking with the teacher. And when I say later, I mean about a year later. And I was the teacher's kappiya, somewhere overseas. And I said, by the way, Bhante, there was this incident, there was this thing. I have a difficulty understanding how can because people were very loud in that retreat, because loud as in saying, oh, I am practicing, I've reached the 4th jhana, 5th jhana, stuff like that, which is so distasteful, so inappropriate. And also saying what type of practice they are doing. And from the practice, you would get an idea where they are. So, and the teacher had said that this person is on this level. And I said, I have an issue with that, because this is what happened. Maybe I'm wrong. Could you tell me? Am I misconstruing? Am I being unfair? These are the factors, these are the facts. And he said, I wish you came and told me at the time. And I said, what are you going to do? What were you going to do? Because this person was believed to be by others that he was on the 5th jhana. 5th jhana. Doing metta practice. And with the metta practice you can advance even beyond that. But basically, I was surprised because there was some dichotomy there. There's something that didn't match, because I had the living experience of something other than metta. How can metta and opposite of metta coexist in a metta retreat? So we have to check our attitude. So if I'm saying I'm practicing metta, I have to be truly checking with myself to see if I am. If we are. Metta has a lot to do with decency, you know? Just being decent, kind. The person on the street might have never heard about Dhamma or the Buddha. Has no clue about what metta is. But when you go and buy, I don't know, something from them, a samosa or something, they look at you and they're smiling, beaming, even if you're not going to buy something. I passed by a few of those vendors, when I had just come here, and I was just checking out the area going to get something, and I saw them and they looked at me and they're like smiling and open. Decency. So it's not some new stripes that you're trying to get with metta practice. It's teaching us to be human, kind. So if the person is truly living a kind lifestyle, it will be really a long stretch for them to have hatred and be kind, or claim that they are practicing metta. So this is a wake-up call for all those of us who think that we are practicing metta, but we're not. But Lord Buddha doesn't stop there, because he's going after the Brahma Viharas, pointing them out one at a time. Again, bhikkhus, a bhikkhu would say, I have cultivated and developed the heart's release through compassion, which has now become my habit and the basis of my constant practice. But even though I have been engaged in it, having scrutinized and properly undertaken it, yet I still experience hostility overwhelming my heart, and I feel lost because of it. Then this bhikkhu should be advised in the following manner. Do not say so, Venerable Sir. Do not misinterpret the words of the Blessed One, nor misrepresent him, for to do so brings you much harm for a very long time. The Blessed One has never said nor instructed such a thing, because it would be impossible that when one has cultivated and developed the heart's release through compassion, when it's already turned into a habit. This is key, turned into a habit. That's the first thing that your heart turns towards. When you see something that is displeasing, instead of saying something nasty about them to them, either loudly or to yourself, the first impression, the first feeling, inner feeling you have is that of, in this case, compassion. You go, I'm sorry they are going through that. It must really hurt to have such anger towards someone. So the person doesn't get into reactionary mode. The Brahma Viharas are not reactionary. Reactionary means it's like a reflex. People would say, if there's an ouch, if there's a pinch, there's an ouch, right? Somebody pinches you, there's an ouch. That's a thing that you learn in acting school. A good actor must react to everything on stage. Nothing has to go amiss. Nothing. It's like you're in a pool of water. And when one actor pushes you, the other actor will feel that push from afar because they push the water. Being on stage when you're acting, it's like that. That's the pinch. So if somebody gives you some nasty look, that does something to us. A good actor will respond, will just, why did you look at me like that? Where did that come from? A good actor is someone who lives like that on stage because they do it so naturally. Natural doesn't interpret into Dhamma though, when we're talking about Dhamma. That's what a Putujjana does. If there's a pinch, the person will say, ouch! So if someone hurts you, someone who practices, in this case, you being the practitioner of compassion, you cannot go and say, ouch! What Lord Buddha is saying is go against the stream. Years ago when I was practicing, or actually learning stage acting, You can tell I've done different things, but I was struggling. Like, I really wanted to get into the role, understand. So we were learning different techniques, Meisner and others, and then you look, and so you finally get it, but then something happened. I realized I'm going against the Dhamma, because I was fighting with myself later on. The acting was teaching me to be reactionary, but at the same time, I'm trying to look at the anger, take a moment, absorb, observe, and then look at what it's doing in my daily life. But after I go into the class or on stage, they were teaching me the opposite. So there was this schism happening in my head. So after class, I waited for the instructors. It was a brilliant, teacher, acting teacher. He taught several famous actors who came out of that school. And I said, Tony, this is the problem. Like, am I making stuff up? And he looked at me and he said, no, from what you're saying, that's an accurate description. But you have to decide, he said, which one to take, because otherwise it's going to be a painful path for you. So he was not the usual acting instructor. So he has some depth to him. So I took it to heart and I said, that's it, I'm leaving acting. This is not it for me. And I had gone into it because my dad kept pushing me for years. You should get into acting, this and that. So anyhow, but that was an appreciation of seeing what life demands of us, because I'm sure you've been in situations where the boss, the partner in life, your husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, mother, father, somebody turned to you and said, if you allow them to do that to you, you'll be a pushover. They will walk all over you. Don't be like that. You'll be too weak. You won't get anywhere in life. All this kind of stuff. So society, by the way that it's constructed, by the way that they have been teaching us, is the current, is the stream. And the Brahma Viharas that Lord Buddha is teaching you is the opposite of that. Watch any sports game, in any country, and you see how even a game turns so violent. The heart races and all that. Panel discussions. Arguments are always there. But are there Brahma Viharas present? So this is not the path for everyone. We have to be honest. This is not the path for everyone. Not everyone does metta, you know. That's why everybody runs towards anapanasati, because it's so impersonal. It doesn't get you to touch the heart. It's safer. It's easier, people say, even though it can be. But when you delve into the metta practice or the Brahma Viharas, you're going into the deep end of things. You cannot fake it. You're dealing with the heart. Not many people are okay with crying. Not everyone is okay with being soft and tender. Forgiveness. How many meditation intensives have you gone to where forgiveness is a big deal, is important? Often during the last 200 or 300 years, it's been all about pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. Strive, strive! It's not like that. We have to keep the human element intact in the practice of Dhamma. And it's not teaching you to be weak, mind you. Being compassionate doesn't mean you're being weak. You're powerful. You know, in Taoism, especially in Chinese martial arts, there's this concept of iron and silk. Iron, steel, and silk. A good martial artist, practitioner, should be both. Be as smooth as silk, but also as hard as steel, as iron. But it's a special skill, which doesn't come overnight. So metta is not going to turn you weak into a weakling. Brahma Viharas are not going to turn you into a weak person that others can walk all over you. It will give you yatha bhutang pajanati. It will give you the Dhamma. You will see. You will have jnana dassana. That means you're set. So it's not a matter of relinquishing something by having compassion to someone else. Because many people have this misconception about forgiveness. Remember, this path is based on discernment, on wisdom. You're not blindly forgiving someone and then throwing yourself on their path so that they can walk all over you again. That's not wise. So you're applying forgiveness through wisdom, applying wisdom all throughout. When you're forgiving someone or some people, you're releasing yourself from them, from that incident, from that act or acts, those acts. But first and foremost, just like when you're doing metta, you must give yourself metta first. Same thing with compassion. First, you are the recipient. It's like a good chef. If you really make a good meal, something like incredibly delicious, well, you have to test it, right? The chef takes a little spoon, tastes it and says, I'm good, take this. It's beautiful, it's delicious. Do it. Taste your own compassion, it's good. Before you release it, taste your metta. Is it delicious? Then offer it to the world, then offer it to the other person. Because it would be impossible that when one has cultivated and developed the heart's release through compassion, when it's already turned into a habit as the basis of one's constant practice by engaging in it, having scrutinized, and scrutinized means carefully looked at what's happening, investigated what's happening in me, watching the mind through sati, Dhamma vichaya is there. And every time you do, suddenly there's saddha coming up. And you have joy arise. I'm really doing this. I'm really enjoying this. Oh, I didn't know compassion could be so much fun. I didn't know forgiving myself is so rich, enriching. It's freeing me from my past. What a release. What a relief. Because many of you have so many chains behind you, you're dragging, you know that? When I'm doing interviews, I have to close my ears because of the clanking of the chains. You're dragging behind. It's annoying. But I have to have compassion, right? So properly undertaking it, that one may still experience hostility, overwhelming one's heart, or even feel lost because of it. After all, friend, hostility is driven out when the heart is released through compassion. I was describing the technique to someone today, and I said, it's like inviting someone over for dinner or lunch, because you guys don't have dinner now. Not to get you too nostalgic. but you're inviting someone for lunch. But there's stuff on the dinner table, lunch table. So what do you do first? There's decorations, there's this, that. You clean up, you remove them. If there's a statue of something, you remove it. You wipe it, and then you bring in the plates. Clean plates. You bring the whatever utensils that you're going to use, and then you go cooking the meal. And that's you generating metta in you. You're cooking. You're preparing the meal. And then, when your guests arrive, that's your spiritual friend, by the way, in case you're following with the images, metaphors. You get the food that is delicious, and you bring it to the dinner table, and you pour it into the plates. The soup, or whatever food it is. And now it's like aromatic, and your friend, spiritual friend, eats it. And you're eating it too, of course, sitting next to them. And spend as much time enjoying that whole atmosphere with your friend, eating the meal that you carefully, kindly, compassionately prepared by you working on it in the kitchen. That is you generating the metta for you first. That's you cooking, preparing the meal. So don't go try to come up with something dry rice and just drop it in the plate and say, okay, go ahead and eat. Open up a sauce can of something and pour it in there. Go ahead and eat. Because sometimes people are doing that. They're saying, okay, what do I do? What do I get? How do I get the metta? Go cook it. Prepare it. You've had millions and millions and millions of experience of good moments. You did. Feel that. And just feel it in your body. Don't dwell on the memories. The memory is just there as a trigger. Immediately you must feel it. If it was a real, genuine moment of love, of joy, it is exuding everywhere. There's not a place in your body that is not experiencing it. And then you're inviting your friend for a meal. You're sharing that metta. And it grows. It grows and grows and grows. In some countries I've been to, some places, you have to eat on your feet, on the standing up. It's like fast, 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 quick. In other countries, some places in Europe, you go there and everybody just kicks back and just starts eating carefully. They about to close the restaurant. Hours later, the waiters are putting the chairs on top of the tables, and you're still there talking, smiling, happy, enjoying. I have a friend, when we used to go to dinners, he would just nibble on the food very slowly. And he liked to talk a lot. And his food would get cold. And I would tell him, okay, let's have a break. Just go ahead and eat your food. I feel bad because you're not eating. And the waiters would sometime come and give us some dirty looks, like, okay, come on. You know. So this is one of those scenes where you can stay as long as you are able to. So when I'm asking you, how long have you stayed with your spiritual friend, uninterrupted, where you've been giving them the meal, the metta, let it be like that dinner, that lunch. Enjoy it with them. Don't make it into a chore, I have to sit for 1 hour, and it's like, okay, I'll push for half an hour extra. It has to be fun. It has to be fun. Here, bhikkhus, a bhikkhu would say, I have cultivated and developed the heart's release through altruistic joy, mudita. This is the third of the Brahma Viharas, as you know, which has now become my habit and the basis of my constant practice. But even though I have been engaged in it, having scrutinized and properly undertaken it, yet I still experience resentment overwhelming my heart, and I feel lost because of it. Then this bhikkhu should be advised in the following manner. So imagine, I always give the example of someone who applies for a job. You're lay people, so you deal with work and business world, etc., making money. Imagine you're applying for a job, a very lucrative position, very prestigious position that you've worked for. Every job you've had pretty much seems like it was leading you to this position. So it's like perfect for you. And you prepared. And someone else, you go in for the interview and you see them outside waiting in the waiting room. And you get to talk, this and that. Okay, nice person, fine. And they go in, you go in, for some reason, they say, don't leave, to both of you. And then they call you in and they say, you have all the qualifications, but he's going to get the job. Or she's going to get the job. What was that feeling you got? Immediate. A person who has mudita, there's not a slip second, just not even a tiny little millisecond where they go, that's resentment. Instead, there's like, yes! They have the job. Because I know how much this means. It would have meant for me. And after talking with them, initially, I saw that they also need it. So for you, it does not make a difference. And you're walking out empty-handed. Borrowed suit, rented suit. You still have to pay for the parking, or maybe got a ticket. But it doesn't matter to you. It's just like, I'm glad they got the job. Somebody got it. And he looks like a decent person. She looks like a decent person. That's what mudita does. And part of your old brain is that sankharas will come in and your old way of living and being educated perhaps, and there is this fighting now that happens in your mind, like, what are you, working against us or what? How could you be happy for this other person? We worked on this all night, all week, we were preparing, we were doing all these mock resume interviews, and now he got the job, and you're celebrating? What kind of a person are you? Those are all the other people in your life. Maybe your father, your mother, your sister, your brother. All these people are still, all sankharas, by the way. But the loudness of mudita in your heart silences them all. That is a person who has mudita. Their pain is your pain. Their joy is your joy. The world doesn't have this quality today. And during the last 2 or 3 years, we have descended in our humanity. A few notches. We've lost so much of our humanity. We need now Brahma Viharas more than ever. If we need to save this planet, this is the way to go. This is the way to go. So, if this person says that I still, even though I feel liberated through mudita, but I still feel resentment, then Lord Buddha says, this should be said to that person. And do not say so, Venerable Sir. Do not misinterpret the words of the Blessed One, nor misrepresent him. For to do so brings you much harm for a very long time. The Blessed One has never said nor instructed such a thing, because it would be impossible that when one has cultivated and developed the heart's release, vimutti, that's the word, heart's release through altruistic joy, when it's already turned into a habit as the basis of one's constant practice, by engaging in it, having scrutinized and properly undertaken it, that one may still experience resentment overwhelming one's heart or even feel lost because of it. After all, friend, resentment is driven out when the heart is released through altruistic joy. When I used to do couples therapy, I would see a person, one of the couples say, listen, I love you, but. That's an oxymoron. I love you ends it. It stops there. Or, I love you, but I hate it when you do this. Where did the love go? We pay lip service a lot. Words don't have the significance as they're supposed to have. Because the person has lost the meaning. The emotional impact is no longer there. We just worship words, empty words, skeletons. So, Lord Buddha is teaching us about relationships. You don't have to be released. You don't have to have had vimutti. If you just have a snippet of this experience, if you have some flavor, understanding of the flavor of what mudita is, already that stops you and makes you do things differently. Because there's not going to be that but in the conversation. Because your eyes will exude, they will be overflowing with love. Maybe the person is hurting you, but you're still looking at them with love, loving eyes. And in that moment, your eyes might actually start tearing up. Tears might flow. Now that does not mean that the other person necessarily will be on the same level, and if they're not, that still gives you an idea as to what to do next. This path is not about stupidity. Wisdom, remember? So we must choose our words. We must choose our actions. When you're saying, Musavada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami in the mornings, it's not just about lying to others, it's also about lying to yourself, which we are excellent at. Because how is you going to come after you? How are you going to come after you, basically? To punish you or to feel hurt, because you're hurting yourself. That's why we are notorious. We are number one at hurting ourselves. And that's one of the biggest reasons why forgiveness comes so difficult for many. Because we are our own victims. We beat ourselves up. We look at our past and say, because of that, because of this, because of that, because of this. And the words that we use to talk to ourselves, the conversation that's going on between your ears, what is its nature? Is it abusive? Is it kind? Does it have elements of compassion? Most often than not, it is not. It doesn't have those. Here, bhikkhus, a bhikkhu would say, I have cultivated and developed the heart's release through equanimity, which has now become my habit and the basis of my constant practice. But even though I have been engaged in it, having scrutinized and properly undertaken it, yet I still experience lust overwhelming my heart, raga, and I feel lost because of it. Then this bhikkhu should be advised in the following manner. So basically, a person who has experienced vimutti thanks to the practice of upekkha, but they have raga, they have lust. It doesn't work. Something is wrong. because they're misrepresenting Lord Buddha, the teaching, the Dhamma. Because if you have experienced, or if you have equanimity at that moment, and remember, equanimity cannot happen without sati. Remember? Sati and upekkha are part of the same seesaw. Sattabhojangas, remember? So, Lord Buddha says, do not say so, Venerable Sir. That's what should be said to them. Do not misinterpret the words of the Blessed One, nor misrepresent him, for to do so brings you much harm for a very long time. The Blessed One has never said nor instructed such a thing, because it would be impossible that when one has cultivated and developed the heart's release through equanimity, when it's already turned into a habit as the basis of one's constant practice, by engaging, that means that has become their object of meditation. Okay? They've developed. But we start from metta, and that's why the interviews are necessary. The teacher has to check on you. How are you changing anything on your own? If you are, you're going to go off course. That's why you need a teacher. The books don't help in the same way. You need an actual human being to do that. A few years ago, I saw a news clip of a temple in Japan that had purchased robots and dressed them in priests' outfits, and they were chanting, because they just didn't have enough priests to do the ceremonies. Robots dressed up in Mahayana clothing. Huh? Which temple? You know which one? Oh, if you just go online, I've seen it recently while I was searching something else. I saw it pop up again, and I just shook my head, because there's another interesting thing I saw in Japan again, sadly, because it's a very sophisticated country. However, it has, unfortunately, it seems like, as far as the Buddhist practitioners concerned, there's no wisdom. Because one temple, because they were not getting enough supporters, turned itself into a bar, and the priest was serving drinks while teaching Dhamma to the patrons. There's even a video clip of him shaking the martini thing, I guess, and about to pour the drink into a glass. Whichever way you touch it, it's full of akusala, completely dirty, completely adharma, or adhamma, as we call it. But it's not a problem that we just see in Japan. Japan's case is, in this case, in these examples that I just brought up, which are factual, by the way. I don't talk about things that I haven't seen, witnessed, or checked. It's like a pus. It's like a pimple that's exploding. There's other areas of the body that the infection is spreading, but it's not as advanced. You see it in Theravada countries all the time. I mean, from day one that I came here, I've been talking about rites and rituals, how they're taken people off the reservation. It's turned into priestcraft, and bhikkhus are not priests. We are not priests. We're not here to do ceremonies. Marriages, funerals, car blessings, all that kind of nonsense. But that's what happens when people are not practicing. And money's coming in. Money's pouring in fact. That's why you have countless monasteries growing in Thailand, in Sri Lanka, here I'm presuming. And at an exponential rate, these monasteries are becoming even more quickly empty of people. Empty of people. Empty of monks. It has nothing to do with the Dhamma. It's not the Dhamma's fault. It's the Dhamma monk's fault. Dhamma, D-U-M-B, monk's fault. And the community that is promoting that, enabling that. You're not holding the monks accountable. And this is not about the East, okay? It's not about Asia only, because I've seen the same problem happen in Europe, in America. It's spreading. It's because it's ignorance. Ignorance doesn't hold a passport, you know? It doesn't have a specific skin color. Doesn't. Ignorance is ignorance. Cruelty is the same. Stupidity is the same. But kindness is also the same. Metta doesn't know color. Metta doesn't hold a specific passport. So each of us are responsible to maintain the Brahma Viharas. So even if the whole world goes crazy, it's Mara. You don't lose yourself in the midst of that craziness. Because it would be impossible that when one has cultivated and developed the heart's release through equanimity, when it's already turned into a habit as the basis of one's constant practice, by engaging in it, having scrutinized and properly undertaken it, that one may still experience lust overwhelming one's heart, or even feel lost because of it. After all, friend, lust is driven out when the heart is released through equanimity. I once saw a person who was teaching metta suddenly get angry at a dog and slap the dog. And I was stunned. I felt hurt. Obviously for the dog, but also for the teacher who teaches metta, is known for metta teaching. I've seen another teacher in America being so contemptuous towards others when the cameras weren't on them, when they were not sitting on a podium, when they were not in a teaching position. They were just in a casual setting, and ugliness poured out. And I was stunned. I just stood there. I was watching my own thoughts, my own reactions to what I saw. And I felt embarrassed for her. So we have to understand, are we paying lip service? Or are we really making good food in the kitchen? Is it really true metta that I'm about to share? Or am I just faking it? Because we are faking often in the world today. Today especially. So that's why in the Vihara Sutta, Lord Buddha says very clearly, scrutinize the teacher. He even put himself there to be scrutinized. He said, even me, the teacher, you have to be observant. Don't accept me just like that because others are accepting me. Live with me, see, watch, observe. Observe. Stay with the teacher. Watch them. Not to find fault, no. You're doing it out of curiosity. You're doing it with respect. And I did go to that other teacher. I said, I'm so sorry, I have to be respectful, but I have to also be true to the Dhamma. I saw these things in your behavior, and I owe it to myself and to you to bring it up, to say something. Because the other students have also seen you do these things. Get angry, hit things, Somebody has to say something. And I said, I'm sorry if I'm doing anything wrong, but I have to be true. That didn't go well. But I felt so good with myself. Because later on, the other students who had been with him for a long time, one of them reached out and said, you did something that none of us have dared to do. Because we know how he would explode on us. Well, where is the metta then? This is not pointing finger at other people. This is pointing the finger at us to inquire whether we are doing ourselves lip service or the actual work. So please do not fake it. Your metta. You must feel it. However much you give to the practice, it will give you back hundredfold. Hundredfold, if not infinityfold. But you're stopping on the way, your own progress. There's nothing wrong with the technique. Webu Sayadaw was known to be a minimalist. He would say, just one technique, just one. Use it. Use that. And he would add, it's like taking the train ride to Mandalay. Mandalay is a city in Burma, Myanmar, from where he was. Don't leave the train, he would say. Don't exit the train. In the midst of it, you're going to come across many stations. Don't get out of your seat. Don't say, well, this technique is not working. Look at her, look at him. Oh, I read about this teacher, they're teaching something else, maybe I should. Don't leave your seat. It delivers. Yeah, but they're saying over there, that technique's... Until the train stops, don't get out of the train, he says. Until they come and kick you out of the train. That is, by the way, arahantship. But you must not quit. But know the technique properly. Learn the technique properly. Execute. Ask questions about the technique. Am I doing it right? And it will show. Is your mind still agitated? Are you fighting with yourself? Are you upset? Are you tense? All of which indicate there's not enough Brahma Vihara happening in you. Because this thing is very scientific in that sense, because it delivers quickly the result. You know if you have contempt in your heart versus happiness or love towards someone. Here, the bhikkhu would say, I have cultivated and developed the signless release of the heart, animitta ceto vimutti in Pali, which has now become my habit and the basis of my constant practice. But even though I have been engaged in it, having scrutinized and properly undertaken it, yet I still experience signs overwhelming my heart, and I feel lost because of this. Signs are nimittas, lights, shapes, things, certain feelings, imagery, that every meditator at one point or another might encounter, but every one of us at some point or another is craving to see them. Always, everybody's like, my mom had a saying, it's like holding a flashlight turned on in broad daylight outside, looking for something. That's how eager you are. Where's, maybe two flashlights. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Oh, there's a light. There's a light. Somebody switched on the light. You just saw it through your eyelids. Okay, relax. We want to make it into a big deal. Even if you do see something unnatural, unusual, still it's a nimitta. Relax. Drop it. Siksar it and move on. Because here it says, if the person really experienced animitta ceto vimutti, that's it. You're not going to be overwhelmed with any signs. They will dissolve before they even think about showing up. Because your gaze is sharper than a laser. Your penetrative insight is undeniable, impeccable. So there's no way that insights can possibly overwhelm you. Just like a person who has equanimity in the heart, there's no way that raga or lust is going to show up and dominate them and they become passionate. Yeah. No. If they have equanimity, they have equanimity. They're watching all of this happen. You're never overwhelmed or saturated by any of this. So he says, this bhikkhu should be advised in this manner. Do not say so, Venerable Sir. Do not misinterpret the words of the Blessed One, nor misrepresent him. For to do so brings you much harm for a very long time. The Blessed One has never said nor instructed such a thing, because it would be impossible that when one has cultivated and developed the signless release of the heart, when it's already turned into a habit as the basis of one's constant practice, by engaging in it, having scrutinized and properly undertaken it, that one may still experience signs overwhelming one's heart, or even feel lost because of this. After all, friend, all signs are driven out through the signless release of the heart. They're driven out. There are no more rats in the house. You kick them out. Next one, here bhikkhus, a bhikkhu would say, I have uprooted the conceit I am, asmimana, and I am fully rid of it, as there is no more the notion of I am this left in me. But even though I do not regard anything as I am, yet I still experience doubts and confusion overwhelming my heart, and I feel lost because of this. Then this bhikkhu should be advised in the following manner. Do not say so, Venerable Sir. Do not misinterpret the words of the Blessed One, nor misrepresent him. For to do so brings you much harm for a very long time. The Blessed One has never said nor instructed such a thing, because it would be impossible that when one has uprooted the conceit I am, when there is no more the notion of I am this left in him, that one may still experience doubts and confusion overwhelming one's heart, or even feel lost because of this. After all, friend, all doubts and confusion are driven out through the uprooting of the conceit I am. Bhikkhus, these are the 6 elements to be driven out. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. In a world where anything goes, and we're losing our dignity by the second, human dignity, where anything and everything is coming under question, standards are being lost, principles are being dumped into the trash can for the sake of technological advancement or globalization, which is something horrible that's happening to the world, where everything is being mixed together. I mentioned to you earlier, I used to paint, and when I was even a teenager, actually even in elementary class, I think when the teacher would give us some paints and things to mix, I became so sad when I took a brilliant blue color and a green and a red and an orange and yellow and this, and I mixed them together and it became something like grayish something, slimy color. And I felt, where did the magic go? Each of these colors were beautiful. They had something, they had a story, they had something to tell me, they were moving me. Suddenly, it's just, yeah, what is this? That's what the world is becoming, you know? But in the name of something good, there's always that. That's how they sell it to us. I try to speak about issues that no one is talking about, which is plaguing the world. And the Dhamma has a position about this, because the world, the way it is at the worst stage it has ever been in my book. I used to be an avid history buff. I would love to read history, dynasties, this, that, technological things that have happened, in different parts of the Middle East, this, that, Europe, other parts of the world, Africa. What happened to these cultures? What happened? And now it's being all mixed together. There's a beauty that's being tossed aside. Now, we have to talk about this. We have to speak about this. Now, what does that have to do with asmimana? I am. When you become a collectivistic thinker, you become part of the problem. You give up. That's not the asmimana that Lord Buddha is talking about. Each one of the Arya Savakas had their own unique characters, idiosyncrasies, if you will. Venerable Ananda stands out as Venerable Ananda. I mean, he did some annoying things, even after Lord Buddha died, which he had to answer for during the first council. He was the attendant of Lord Buddha's for at least 25 years. He didn't become an arhat. He always had an excuse. But he was wonderful in connecting the laity to the Sangha. We owe so much to him. In fact, the whole Nikayas, we owe it to him. Whenever we read, I have personally heard this, that's Venerable Ananda's voice. Evam me sutam. For months he chanted that. But then you have Venerable Anuruddha, when you have Venerable Maha. Each of these had relinquished asmimana. They conceit, I am this. This is my thing. I don't like this, myself. They had relinquished those characteristics. But that doesn't mean they became grayish, mixed up, a jumble of something, indistinguishable from everything else. That's not what Lord Buddha is talking about. Giving up your individuality, in a sense. That's not what it is. You cannot give it up. That's not asmimana. It's the identification with it. And today people are coming up with new identifications every day. Well, I feel like I need to have 3 arms. Okay, let's go and have another arm planted here. People are doing crazy, crazy things. Things that they used to be sent to psychiatric wards for. Now, well, we can't say something about it because they feel that way, so go ahead and chop that thing off. 20, 30 years ago, those things would be criminal. But we're allowing that in the name of, well, that's how they feel. In the 80s and 90s in America, in the US, the psychiatric wards had to be shut down. They suddenly did not get any funding from the government. So they started closing up. Where did all these people go? Onto the streets, into their families. Well, sooner or later, the families had to kick them back out. They were too much. And now they became a burden on society. Not just a burden, but they kept on suffering. Suffering and suffering and suffering. People tried and have been trying to help them. I used to be one of those, working at a community center, mental health community center, overwhelmed with patients coming in through the door with all kinds of issues. And it breaks your heart. And with all our technological advances, you have machines chanting you Heart Sutra, right? In Japan and other places. All those technologies, AI, this, that. In one country in the Gulf, I think some government even gave a robot citizenship. They gave them their passport. They gave her a robot that they named a female name, a citizenship, which, by the way, they will never give. In that particular country, they will never give anybody any citizenship if you're not really from there for many, many generations. But they gave this robot citizenship in the Gulf, in the Middle East. I mean, how ridiculous can human beings get? Well, I think we ain't seen nothing yet, as they say in America. It's going to get worse. So we need to really be on top of our Dhamma. We need to know what's happening, take responsibilities, and not be ostriches squeezing our head into the sand, like I see a lot of people doing, under the guidance of teachers. So the suttas, when we interpret them, when we address them, when we talk about them, they need to reflect our day and time and issues. Okay? The relevancy has to be intact. We should not be afraid to talk, for example, about the things that are happening in Japan, for example. The issues about, nobody's talking about this. I have never heard any bhikkhu scoffing at it. Instead, you have another teacher, another bhikshu, a Mahayana monk, playing guitar. And all those are being spread around the world. And other monks are applauding that. Often I go back and read in the suttas how, when he was asked, several occasions, Lord Buddha, as to how long will the sasana last? And he said, 500 years. And then I look and I see 2,600, almost 2,600 years. I'm like, we're lucky. It could have been worse. It could have been worse, but that doesn't mean that we need to pull our hands away and say, sorry for the future generations. We must do our best in our own capacity, however way we can, at least in your own practice, to do something to protect the sasana. At least you do not pollute it with wrong views. But this world is not supposed to be, Dhammaloka. This is Maraloka. It always will be. But Lord Buddha says, when he's asked, where can Nibbana be found? He says, in this fathom-long body. Ah, so we have the tools. Yes! Go to the kitchen and make your meal and share it with your spiritual friend. Metta practice. Metta practice. And grow with it. Grow with it. If your practice, well, for you, for this week it's metta, but if for some reason you don't want to practice after the retreat, by all means, do Anapana, who cares? But give everything to it. This is not a preference over one technique over the other. No, Lord Buddha taught many, many techniques. Webu Sayadaw was a big, avid Anapana practitioner. But any teacher will say, ultimately, it's not the technique, as Webu Sayadaw said several times. Is there urgency? Samvega must be number one. And Samvega is the thing that should make us be worried about the status of the Dhamma. We should say something when we see something that is wrong. But ultimately, this is not about protesting and going outside with banners and things. No. Just do your practice, because that is where the asmimana is. You have to overcome these ideas and these ghosts. Those are the real ghosts, by the way, the chains that you're dragging behind you. My old version, the wounds that I have, the hurts, my mom, my dad, my society, whatever, my body, my sickness, my this, my that. All those are part of the asmimana. So if you practice, even for one moment, using one technique, you are practicing the entire Dhamma, with 84,000 teachings in it, in a heartbeat. If you practice 1 second metta, genuinely, truthfully, or you breathe in, fully present, those 84,000 teachings are there in you. Nothing can touch that. Nothing. So I will leave you with those. Question number 1, just 2 questions. If one does not hope, pray, or wish, does that mean the individual is hopeless? And there's a sad face next to it drawn. Let's see the next question. Between sati and intention, there seems to be a fine gap, especially seen in walking meditation. I sense the act of decision-making is within the power of the yogi. I sense the act of decision-making is within the power of the yogi. Where else did you expect it to be? Thank you, Bhante. My head has just got deflated today. Okay, so let's start with the, well, they're both in a way connected, both questions. I need to get my voices. If one does not hope, pray, or wish, when you say it like this, or when you have this position, this position to look at, hope, praying, or wishing, it almost sounds like I'm being told not to hope, pray, or wish, which also indicates to me that it's kind of like forced upon you. It's like, I'm trying to here and you're not allowing me to, or this is wrong type of a thing. So that approach doesn't have samma sankappa to begin with. Samma sankappa is the right intention. So we don't have, in our tradition, based on the teachings of Lord Buddha's, we don't have this thing called prayer as such, where you go, ask, and hope to get something. You have prayer and hope there. Did you see that? Hope and pray. You're waiting for something. Now, with the wish part, we have something similar. Now, in the next question you ask, you say about intention. Wish and intention have very close, they have a proximity, they have some relationship, close relationship. But wish also has this passive quality. I wish for world peace. I wish for all poverty to be, and hunger to be completely gone. While you buy stocks. New York Stock Exchange, that functions on taking money from the poor, basically, making war, because so many of the entities that are responsible for starting war and destroying people and killing people and destroying lives and producing poverty and crazy people also. Insanity, depressed people, PTSD. I've dealt with PTSD myself. I've said it a few times. All these people who are responsible, they have their own companies, corporations, making guns and weapons. All the, first world countries, they have weapons. The same people who are saying we're meeting today to bring peace into the world. Yeah, but you're making $100 billion over there, selling rockets and guns. Switzerland, for example, making weapons. They don't make just chocolate, So It's like I wish for, it's very passive. That's not what I meant by, we have something similar to that in the Dhamma. We have this thing called Chanda, Chanda. And that has more of an element of it's a fervent desire. But it's not just like kileshas. For example, Lord Buddha had to have some level of desire to leave the royal family, to continue. If you go and see the places that he lived, one tiny cave that he used to live in, it's so narrow, it's so tight, and it's so hot. Even in the mild season in India, there's no air circulating. He sat there. So you pop your head into that cave and you're like, you can't breathe, so you have to get out very quickly. What can drive a person to, that's another word, good word, instead of wish, the drive. That we have, that's Chanda. That's the thing which is going to get the swimmer to the island across the ocean that I was giving you the example of earlier. Swimming, you look at the trajectory, you make up your mind and you go for it. But it's different than a wish, if you notice, because you are involved in the process. It's not just a wish. So in that sense, and the hopeless part, it's totally irrelevant. There's wrong view in the question, because it says, if one does not hope, pray, or wish, does that mean that the individual is hopeless? Why are you here? You should have already left. This is which day is this? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 4th day. You must have something working for you to stay here for 4 days. Away from your bed, your food, your dinners. So, it's good that I'm not trying to mock the question but still, we need to check. Because when we ask questions, there's some courage being applied, and I applaud that. But we have to also inquire whether there's wisdom in this, because it reveals the wrong view, the micchaditthi in it. Because this needs samadhi. We need to understand why we are here. Perhaps you just want to get away. Perhaps you want to cleanse or detox somehow, mentally detox or emotionally detox. That's why you're here, perhaps. You could start from there. But we do have Chanda, and Chanda is necessary, because there will come times where you will be hopeless. Yes. It will feel like you're going against so much, and you're climbing up a mountain and it's very slippery, and it starts to rain, and somebody gets a bucket of oil and pours it on. So it can get hopeless sometimes, but it's very momentary, because it's all delusion. It's all your hang-ups that you're fighting against. There is no slippery slope. It's just your impatience that makes it look like somebody poured the oil and it's thunderstorm and it's like all this. All of these are sannyas, including hope, pray, and wish. Because when a person goes and prays, their head is full of sannyas, and they have a lot of lobha. I want this, I want this, I want that. Please, why don't I take this? And it's like, I need health, I need this. Save my cousin from the hospital, this, this. It's very infantile, yes. But there's also this longing to change, to get rid of impermanence. Remember what I said yesterday that Lord Buddha mentioned about Putujanas? An uninstructed, unevolved human being, common human being, they look at something impermanent, in essence, completely, 100% impermanent, and expect to find permanency. While the person who has been encouraged to have hope or wish will go and get on their knees and beg and beg and beg and pray so that they create something permanent out of impermanence. that is lacking wisdom. Remember, this path is about wisdom. But we do have, in a sense, I would say, a level of hope in your own goodness. Leave everyone out. And when you're taking refuge in Lord Buddha in the morning, you're not taking it in a person who died. Who died. Yes, he was the Buddha, but he died. You're not taking it in him. You're taking it in the possibility that you yourself, if you put the time and effort to understand, to go deep, you too have that same potential. That can be interpreted as hope for some. And I have no problems with that. So long as it will give you that impetus, that drive, chanda, to go forward, because life will be hard. Life will be hard. But it's not going to be hard all the time because it's anicca, remember? Anicca is not always something bad. The bad also, if it's anicca, it's going to get good. All right, nobody talks about that. Oh, I'm going to lose this, I'm going to lose. No, you're going to also experience some good things. So as far as sati and intention, they in fact cannot work without the other. Intention without sati could easily be raga based, kilesha based. You might intend to go ahead and your desire might be misplaced, and now you have the intention of making lots and lots and lots of money, or something along the lines of getting something, including coming to a retreat and I intend to achieve Sotapatti. And now you're pushing and you're pushing and you're pushing and you're pushing. I think I told you about one gentleman that I was doing a retreat in Penang, and he was so driven, he had very strong intentions, but no sati. He even had brought special earphones to kill any noise. And he would lie on his back with his hands like this, and he's trying to meditate, supposedly. One time I was helping another fellow meditator, we were sharing a room, and he was in pain. Suddenly this gentleman rushed in, and actually no, that was another time in the same week. But we come back and I see a note on the sleeping mat, because we were sleeping on the ground. And the note said, "Please don't talk again. You're chattering too much," something like that. And we weren't chatting, it was just helping someone with some problem, and that was the end of that. So, where is... And it was also a metta retreat. Metta. Go figure. So the intention must be together, going with sati. You cannot separate it. If you are seeing a gap, then that has to do with the fact that you don't have sati. And you're going to have a lot of gaps. Until it becomes fluid-like. Flows into. Everywhere you go, it will be sati-filled, sati-filled. And if you do find a gap, fill it up. That's my suggestion here. If you do find a gap, fill it up. And so yeah, the act of decision making is always in your hands. We're not machines like they say in the World Economic Forum of, the globalist mentality of, we're just machines, reductionist, mechanistic way of looking at a human being. No, there's creativity in us, there's love in us. What happened to the whole organic being? Go tell that to Leonardo da Vinci. If you've ever seen Michelangelo's David or Moses, your jaw will drop just looking at this wonderful work that a human being made out of solid rock. and it feels like there's an actual human being sitting there in front of you. How can another human being do that? And that's just one example. So we need to steer clear from, being that way of, reductionist or deterministic. That's another thing. I was telling someone today how we have to be very careful when people teach us, even teachers especially. You have to understand many teachers come from with their own proclivities, their own filters, their own hang-ups. They might use big words, they might have degrees, they might have actually been monks for a long time. Doesn't matter. How true is it to the Dhamma? And most importantly, is there evidence in the form of, is what he or she is teaching, and I'm applying it, am I getting the results that I see in the suttas? That has to be your test. But if it's simply adding more junk, more cognitive nonsense, but giving you just the image, the impression, the hope that I have attained something, or I could be. Meanwhile, your life is just in misery. But you have tons and tons of ideas and perceptions. There's something wrong here. You're not even in the same zip code as the Dhamma. Something is wrong. So again, check the Vimamsaka Sutta. I've done talks on that. I've even done one, I think, Can We Investigate Our Teachers? Last year, I think, with the StreamYard series of Dhammadana series. Check that. Because I really go deep into that. So, but the Vimamsaka Sutta, just read Lord Buddha's words about that. Don't just accept any. I mean, we did the Kalama Sutta a few weeks ago. Don't hope that this teacher, he sounds nice, he sounds right, but how do you know? Test it. Go see. Does it give you that sense of ease, equanimity? Does it give you that stillness? If you practice, instead of blind belief, because we have a lot of that. We cannot call the Dhamma anymore, even the Theravada tradition, we cannot call it like, oh, we're the most, down to earth. No, we can't say that. If we can, that's only going to come from you testing it on yourself and seeing the proof of it in your life. That's it. Otherwise, we don't have the right to call it like that. We have to see it for ourselves and not say, yes, Theravada Buddhism is like, yeah. No, we can't say that. Because there's a lot of mumbo-jumbo at it now. And a lot of lack in practice. I am sorry for my poor understanding, but I am a little confused after listening to your Dhamma talk. What are you teaching us? If you say that you are teaching Dhamma, am I right in understanding that you are teaching the same Dhamma as the many bhikkhus, meditation teachers, and so-called Dhamma talkers in the world? No, I'm not. I'm not teaching you what I have witnessed being taught in the last 10, 20 years. I have actually been fortunate enough to come across some talks given in the past, like Webu Sayadaw that I mentioned, that Ajahn Mun I mentioned. Unfortunately, I don't see Dhamma talks, or talkers, as you say, Dhamma talkers in the world. If you've been listening to me, if you've attended any of my talks here during the last at least 2 months, you know that I don't sound like any of them. That's not my intention. But is it the Dhamma, the same Dhamma as Lord Buddha's? Which, that's what I'm only interested in. I didn't become a bhikkhu for the bhikkhus out there. I didn't become a bhikkhu for the Sangha out there in the world. Not to mean disrespect for the good bhikkhus out there, but I became a bhikkhu because of my wanting to. and to practice and to taste the same fruits as the Arya Savakas of Lord Buddha's, and to hold true to the teachings. And not only that, but to dedicate as much time I have on this planet to share the Dhamma and to protect the Dhamma in whatever way I have learned. I've been studying the Dhamma for over 35 years. I'll try to preserve it. That's why I record, translate, retranslate now the suttas and record them so that people can have it. But the issues that I discuss, I actually find it very difficult to find in the world being discussed by other Dhamma teachers, other bhikkhus. So that's what I'm teaching. And plus, if you have actually paid attention to my talks, you would already know what I am teaching you. I am teaching you the Dhamma. I'm not teaching you what is in fashion, especially in Asia. You have a fascination with celebrity monks, I noticed. Many places. Not all of you, but I've noticed this a lot. I have students in Thailand, in other places, and I've noticed this pattern. Why is that? Why are we not looking at Lord Buddha as our teacher? Why is some Sayadaw or some Ajahn our teacher suddenly? That's what I'm asking in my Dhamma talks. We cannot hide behind the teacher's robes. That's what I'm teaching you. And it's just a teaching. You are free to accept or not. That's what I'm teaching you. It is uncomfortable. But that's how truth is. I'm teaching you the truth. I'm sick and tired of lies. I grew up in a world where I've seen lies, criminality, hatred, more lies, injustices. But I have also noticed a lot of individuals slacking off from their responsibilities as bhikkhus by not bringing up Samvega. If you don't talk about Samvega, if you don't light the fire underneath each of the students' mat, there's something wrong. You need to shake people up. Other Dhamma talkers might, but I have not yet come across recently, in recent past. My hope is there would be more. There's a hope. My hope is there would be more. And I see people now, I see people reaching out from different parts of the world. Young novice monks reaching out, sending me emails, expressing their discontent about what they're seeing as well. This is not just what one person is seeing. I'm sure others are seeing, and that's why they're coming, they're asking. So that's what I'm addressing, I'm shedding the light on. So, there's nothing to be confused about. If you see anything that I'm saying that goes against the Dhamma, please do. Next question that you write, please point that out to me. Where is that? How is that? Why is that? If I am saying something against the Dhamma, otherwise there's something wrong with the question. Bhante, with gratitude, kindly provide some of the benefits of these two postures, seldom practiced nowadays, standing meditation techniques and the finer details. And so too lying meditations, as I was made aware it helps with digestion if done properly. Appreciate your compassion to share with what is said of these two seldom mentioned postures. Lord Buddha talks about 4 postures in the Kayanupassana section. Sitting, of course, standing, walking, and lying down in the lion's posture, which is on the right side of the body. We have, Lord Buddha didn't mention all the postures because it's impossible. The human body goes through many different postures. But he had to narrow it down into 4 groupings. 4 different groupings, which combine all. Standing, sitting, walking, and lying down. Primary, major positions. There were meditators who used to use walking meditation. And there were those who would use standing meditation. Now, this is not just purely just that posture. We need to remember that. Lord Buddha taught us the middle path, middle way. In India, even if you go now, there is the tradition of fixating on one. Fixating on one. Either one posture, one technique, and one this, or one that. And they do that at the exclusion of everything else. That's what I mean by being an extreme versus a middle path, because Lord Buddha didn't say just stand and meditate. That's unnatural. I've seen pictures of yogis in India, and one of them had his arm up like this for 26 years. Yeah. The arm had become so weak, and there's no blood, and it's blackish. It's totally useless. Another one hasn't, or didn't, or doesn't cut their nails, and you have the nail spiraling. These are when it becomes like a fetish almost. So these are not what Lord Buddha means by just, when you're walking meditation, these 4 postures. When you're sitting, the body might start aching, might start having certain symptoms. Hence, you have walking meditation. But sometimes when you're walking meditation, your mind gets to such a still point of equanimity. It just compels you not to move. So you stop. And that's what we do usually at the end of the walk, in each direction. We stop. We breathe. And then when the time is right, we turn carefully, rolling on the left heel usually, and taking the right foot next to it, and then we pause. Now we're turning back this way. Take another breath. But sometimes it is so stilling that you don't want to move. And the mind is so calm. For such a person, Lord Buddha would advise, stand. Keep standing for as long as you want. Now there have been individuals, there's one bhikkhu who was doing walking meditation, and he got so tired. He had been doing it for so long, and it so happened that he was so tired he stood there, and he leaned. He was standing to kind of get his composure, and he got to do standing meditation. And then the next moment he opened his eyes, he was leaning against a post in Tavatinsa heaven. He died standing up. And remember the maidens, the nymphs, yesterday in the sutta? Because he was practicing such high level of sila, and he had such good samadhi, but he was not a sotapanna. He was not a sotapanna. So he dies, and he's reborn, reappears in Tavatinsa heaven. So the maidens of the palace, because he's now standing at the front gate of his palace. He doesn't know this. He's still thinking, I'm a bhikkhu. He's still thinking, I'm a bhikkhu, and all of a sudden these women, colorful attire, barely clothes, whatever, rushing at him, and they're saying, Master, 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 you're back. And they're touching him. And he's like, why? What's happening? Stay away. He says, I'm a bhikkhu. And they look at him, and they pull away, and they look at him, and they say, what? You are our Lord, our master of this palace. The previous Lord died, and he reappeared. Like yesterday I was saying, when you're reborn in the heavenly realm, you don't come out of a womb like a human or an animal. So you reappear. You reappear into that position, that post, like Sakka does. So he just reappeared while he was standing and meditating. And then he sees himself, oh my, I'm surrounded with so much pleasure here. I don't want this. This is terrible. This is terrible. He starts panicking. So as a deva of such a high level of rebirth, he has the potential, as most devas do, to reappear in the human realm. And he comes straight to Lord Buddha. And he bows down to Lord Buddha and he says, Bhante, you have to help me. I'm in misery. What happened? I died. I wasn't counting on this. I wanted to be able to have jnana dassana. So Lord Buddha has compassion over him, towards him. And he teaches him the Dhamma until he does become a sotapanna. Because he was afraid that the next time, after that birth, he might end up in the lower realms. And you have a high probability that you will. Not would, but you will. If you're not a sotapanna. That's why we don't crave for, heavenly birth. So that's what comes to mind from the question on standing meditation. So please don't underestimate it. Not for the heavenly birth, but because of what it does. But it works, the way I understand it, it works in conjunction with the walking meditation. And the walking meditation also works in conjunction with the sitting meditation. Now the fourth one is tricky, which is the lying down. Because we also have a Dhutanga practice, or austerity practices. These are not meant for just anyone. Usually bhikkhus practice it, but not only bhikkhus. Lay people have been known to practice sometimes. And there's one that says it is the practice of the sitter's posture, it's called. Sitter's posture. You don't lie down. You sit. You can lean on something, let's say on your back, but you can also walk or stand, but you cannot lie down. That's something that no one tells you to do, by the way. You take it upon yourself to do. It's just like you're taking the precept not to eat after lunch. That's you deciding that. No one else is telling you to. So similarly, but if you are not taking that Dhutanga path, you can always, every one of us could try that. Tonight when you lie down to sleep or you're so exhausted. And usually Lord Buddha would include that as part of the meditation for individuals who have tired themselves from walking meditation, from sitting meditation, standing meditation. So eventually you have to lie down. So what he would say is, if it's that exhausted, the person is that exhausted, go ahead, lie down with your hand like this usually, putting your ear in between the thumb and the index like this, and have some comfortable padding underneath, and the neck has to be not parallel but slightly up. Okay, I've talked with chiropractors, and they've also mentioned how it needs to not be like equal to the horizontal. So the neck has to be slightly lifted. So just extra, lift under the neck. also for the saliva and everything else. But it's something that each of us has to try to see the right position for the body. And the left leg, the knee, and both knees are slightly bent. They're not straight, because otherwise you're just doing a balancing act. You're doing a lot of core workout, basically. In yoga, we have a posture like that. So it's powerful. But knees are bent, but one leg, the top leg, is overlapping it, which anchors the other leg down so you don't flip over either side. So left knee is touching the ground. Meanwhile, the left ankle is over the right. So it's like, like this. So this would be the right leg, and the left leg is like this. So this would be the knee, okay? So, and then you make the resolution that you're going to maintain sati. But if you do fall asleep, may I wake up in 3 hours and 25 minutes, or 5 hours and whatever. In Lord Buddha's case, he would use that posture because he had a severe backache. Very severe. So in the middle of a Dhamma talk, he would say, okay, time out, I have to lie down. And he would call Venerable Sariputta or Ananda to continue the talk in some suttas we have, as he's resting. But his sati was so perfect that he would know what was discussed. And he would wake up right at the right time that he said he would. Years later, when Devadatta tried to break the Sangha, he actually tried to do the same and pretended like he was like the Buddha. And he's like, when Sariputta and Maha went to get the other bhikkhus who were convinced or were persuaded by Devadatta to break away, so he thought that Maha and Sariputta are there to join him. So he's like, wow, the chief disciples are here, they're joining me, and they left Buddha. Yes, that's how good I am. And he says, Sariputta, my back is hurting, let me lie down. As if he was the Buddha. And he lies down, and Sariputta just look, and it's like he's snoring. And he teaches a lovely Dhamma. He gives them a lovely Dhamma talk. And all those monks get up and walk with Venerable Sariputta and Maha and leave. They go back to Lord Buddha. Devadatta wakes up from his long slumber and he sees there's nobody left except for a few monks here and there. And so it's designed to be a meditation posture. Many people mistake that Venerable Ananda went to sleep, wanted to go to sleep after he exhausted himself on that last night, prior to the first council. But no, he wanted to actually practice because he didn't have the luxury of saying, I'm going to go to take a nap, because he knew that 499 arahants were waiting for him in the cave the next morning, waiting for him to recite the suttas. And they were not going to allow him unless he was an arahant. A lot was riding on it. Venerable Anuruddha had come to encourage them. Venerable Mahakassapa had come, encouraged them, and giving him that boost. So he had plenty of support, and he had so much Sangvega. He was Sangvega. That's what I teach, by the way. That's what I teach. And if there are other bhikkhus, that is beautiful, and I bow to them in respect, because they are practicing what Lord Buddha taught. That's what we are teaching. But if you're not finding them, then I will say sadly that I don't know of anyone who's teaching that. You have Ajahns and Mahatheras carving pumpkins for Halloween, when it's Halloween season. Abbots of monasteries, famous monks. That's what's happening. It doesn't have to be that way. So Sangvega was what Venerable Ananda was living. So he didn't have the luxury. So he was so exhausted, his feet were killing him. He had done sitting meditation, walking meditation, standing meditation, sitting meditation, walking meditation. So he said, okay, fine, I'll sit on my bed and go into the lion's posture so I can now do the fourth type of posture and meditate in that. That was the intention. Many people mistake that he wanted to sleep. He didn't. He didn't. But his Sangvega was so strong, his intention was so right on point, that before, right from the position of his sitting to slowly, with sati, his yoniso manasikara was incredible, pure, like diamond. From the sitting to the lying down, before his head touched the pillow, he became an arhat. So, you must have Sangvega. You must have Sangvega. Without Sangvega, Dhamma doesn't exist. And that's why we are suffering in the sasana today, because there isn't Sangvega. People are living, people are teaching, people are practicing as if we have eternity. The principles have just become something else that you can add on to. Information, data. That is not doing, that's not showing respect to Lord Buddha, the 45 years of his teaching. Calling yourself a Buddhist means nothing. Wearing robes is nothing, actually, means nothing. Your life must express that. The way you treat others must respect that, must express that. That's why when Dhamma is life, life is Dhamma, that's what we mean. So, I will finally stop here. So let us transfer some merits. Akasatha Chabhumata Devanaga Mahitika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakhantu Lokasasanam. Akasatha Chabhumata Devanaga Mahitika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakhantu Desanam. Akasatha Chabhumata Devanaga Mahitika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakhantu Mam Paranti. Sadhu Sadhu.